Alright, what's going on everybody? So this is my review for Anthem. Now before I get into the actual review, I just want to preface by saying this. Before, when I used to make these video reviews, I used to put some sort of a time limit on my reviews because, people in general have a short attention span and don't necessarily always want to listen to a long video or watch a long video. But I've decided I'm going to throw the time limit away and I'm just going to speak my thoughts on these games until I feel satisfied that I've detailed everything I want to in the review, and I'm just going to let the viewers decide how much they want to listen to. So my reviews are going to be much more detailed, analytical, and be almost like a discussion slash review and not only a review. So I hope you enjoy. So first, let's talk about the story. So I've never been a fan of BioWare's games. And I know a lot of people are going to find that shocking, but it's the truth. The only game they've ever made that I even slightly liked and enjoyed was Dragon Age Inquisition. So that being said, I didn't have like the same story crafting expectations of Anthem like a fan of BioWare's would have. That doesn't mean I'm going to be any less critical when analyzing the story. It simply means I'm judging the story on its own merits and with a more blank slate, like I would any other game, regardless of who the developer is. So the problem with Anthem is it has an identity crisis. It tries to be too many things because it's unsure of what it wants to be. The game as a whole lacks a focused direction, which in turn hurts the story. I'm going to talk about some details of the exposition of the story, so this may include minor spoilers, because I feel it needs to be explained to fully analyze the story. So you've been warned. I won't go into the actual, details of what you play, but I will go into the background and the exposition and the setup of the story. The Anthem of Creation is an infinite power source, and there are relics that gather power from the Anthem. These relics are volatile and unstable, and they are scattered around the planet. These relics terraform the planet, and they spawn monsters randomly. Now, centuries before the start of the actual game, mankind was enslaved by a race called the Urgoth, right? A woman named Helena Tarsis and her allies used the relics to invent exosuits that allowed them to overthrow the Urgoth and free themselves from captivity. Now, when I was listening to this be explained in the game, the Urgoth reminded me of the Skrulls, and the Helena Tarsis story reminded me of Iron Man, both from Marvel. Not saying that, BioWare took this story from that. I'm just saying that's what it made me think of. Now, as you can guess, the original exosuit she created became known as a javelin. Helena Tarsis also died during the battle to free mankind. So she became, this legend, martyr, and monolith. Now, fast forwarding way past that, cities are now protected by a group called the Sentinels. The Sentinels are just javelin pilots who act as the police. Freelancers, hence the name, are mercenary javelin pilots who take on contracts and missions outside of the city and outside of the jurisdiction of the Sentinels. Freelancers are remotely assisted on missions by ciphers. Ciphers are very knowledgeable individuals and have psychic abilities that can sense the power of the Anthem of Creation. This kind of made me think of Iron Man and Jarvis, or Iron Man and Friday relationship, who are or were his artificial intelligent assistants, right? So the story of the player actually starts when a veteran freelancer and his team, including you, in your rookie year, go on a mission to deactivate a very powerful relic named the Cenotaph. Long story short, shit hits the wall, a lot of freelancers die, and you pretty much get the Leon Kennedy experience as a rookie. Now, the rest of the story is pretty much a fight and a race to go to these powerful relics, get them, deactivate them before they fall into the the wrong hands and those who would use it for evil. That kind of cliche. I'm sure you've kind of heard it all before. So, the actual plot of Anthem isn't all that bad. It's just very disjointed and very poorly delivered. On paper, it's a very interesting concept and narrative, but they fail to translate that into the game very well. There's just no marriage between gameplay and story. Instead, those two dimensions of this game feel like they are acting completely on their own. They're separate entities. This could have been better executed if the game was scaled down a bit and they tightened the scope of the game. There's just this dissonance, and it's very noticeable between the looter shooting aspect and the cohesiveness needed to tell a story properly. I don't think it's impossible to tell a deep story in a looter shooter, but I think it is harder to do it with this genre. And developers are having trouble with it. Because creating a games as a service and crafting a great story just seem to be at war with one another. Even though games like, Borderlands have been out for a while, the looter shooter genre as we know it and as we define it today is somewhat new. I think the issue is developers still have not figured out how to correctly weave the aspects of good storytelling into this genre and have not invested enough time into it. A games as a service looter shooter with a good story is going to require a lot of time, a lot of manpower, and a lot of resources. More than the average game because of the sheer amount of content you will need to create. You have to craft the base game, and then you have to prepare some of the end game before the actual game comes out. And then there's the story, quality control, and all these other things a project of this magnitude and scale would demand. As we know, shareholders and publishers aren't the most willing to give games extra time needed to deliver a solid experience for the customer. They don't care about the end quality of the product. They only care about the potential to make money back. But they don't realize the two are interconnected. Even though the foundation of some good lore is established in Anthem, the story is ultimately lackluster due to the poor delivery and the huge separation of story and gameplay. So this story was not delivered and executed well, but I could easily see the potential it had to create a universe that the player could have fell in love with and one that they could have expanded on. But unfortunately, it didn't end up that way. So now let's talk about the most important dimension of games, which is the gameplay, obviously. And the gameplay is where I feel Anthem shines and gets a lot of things right. The combat, shooting, skills, and unique abilities varied between the 4 javelins are the sole redeeming factor in this game. Flight feels exhilarating and unlike anything that I've personally experienced in a game before. Intertwining air traversal and combat sets this game apart from many others, but even when I'm on the ground, the experience is still very enjoyable and satisfying with the combat. The third-person shooting feels phenomenal to me, and I consider myself a third-person shooting connoisseur. It is my favorite genre. The guns feel powerful because of the great animation, sound effects, feedback, and presentation. It just gives the player this impression that they are impacting massive and a massive amount of damage on enemies. And there's a good variety of weapons, and they have different stats and they perform differently. For example, I had a sniper rifle that had a high RPM, so I could fire it almost like an assault rifle. But then I also had a single shot sniper rifle that did explosive damage on impact. Gaining different types of weapons, abilities, and buffs made going on missions feel worth it every single time, because this game does a great job at rewarding you for every mission, for every task, for everything you do. I never once felt like a mission I did was pointless because I always got some type of upgrade from what I previously had in my loadout. Customizing my javelin's, appearance, weapons, and abilities in the Forge was something I always look forward to doing after every single mission. There are decals, plenty of colors, designs, javelin parts to make your suit look aesthetically pleasing. There are a good variety of weapons like, heavy pistols, grenade launchers, assault rifles, Gatling guns. But unfortunately, you can't customize these weapons in any way at all. No attachments, no color. You can't design your weapons like you can design your javelins, unfortunately. Now, each javelin has their own specialty, strengths, and weaknesses. The Colossus is obviously the tank. The Ranger is kind of your all-around javelin. The Storm is the elemental powerhouse. And the Interceptor is your melee, very lightly armored javelin that's all about speed and agility. The Colossus and the Storm were my personal favorites. The Colossus can sustain a lot of damage and output the same, and has a shield that can charge into enemies and also block projectiles. The Storm can, deliver fire, ice, and lightning damage, which can cause status ailments. When used in synergy, all of these javelin abilities can create combos. For example, the Storm can freeze enemies while the Colossus can do a shield charge on the ground. There are plenty of move combinations that can be done, and that is one of the things to me that stop the gameplay from getting dull or old. The customization slots for javelins are the assault system, weapons, strike system, support system, and components. And what's great about the component upgrades is there are general buffs that can be applied to any javelin, but then there are other buffs that are specifically designed to improve each javelin's unique abilities. Now, the enemies in this game aren't interesting. They aren't, unique, and they lack variety. So the enemies are pretty generic. And the hub world honestly sucks. And it's annoying that you can barely run in the hub world. The running is comparable to briskly walking, damn near. It just serves as a place to move the story along, talk to some characters, and to get your next mission. But, that could easily be done without the city, if you get what I'm saying. The city does nothing for the player. It offers you nothing, it just has no real purpose. Because as soon as you finish a mission and they put you back there, you're just in a rush to get back to the mission. Nobody is enjoying the atmosphere of the city, or enjoying, walking around the city and collecting, and learning the lore of this place. It doesn't really offer anything. The conversations with a lot of the characters and the dialogue choices are generic and honestly pointless. They have no bearing on how the story turns out, and they're just dull, uninspiring, and poorly designed. This is clearly BioWare trying to do a little bit of what they're known for and what their studio has done well in the past, but this was just a poor effort. Now, when you're not on a story mission, you can do free play or strongholds, which is supposed to kind of serve as part of the end game content and just a way to level up and get some extra loot. The end game offers a little bit more in the story and the gameplay department, but it's honestly just more of the same. Maybe if there is ever an Anthem 2, which I honestly highly doubt. As much as I enjoyed this game, I highly doubt there's going to be an Anthem 2. But if there was, I think they would better learn how to implement and how to design the endgame content. Much like, Ubisoft is with the Division 2. They learned a lot of things from the original Division, and then they seemingly made better content, endgame content for the Division 2. One thing that's annoying me currently in gaming is like the countless number of menus and or inventory systems. And Anthem is like a serious offender of having too many tabs in its menus. The number one offender is the game I just previously mentioned, is Division. So all these games are like really blowing my mind and annoying me. They have the most complex and like convoluted inventory system and menu system. They need to simplify it because it's honestly a lot of redundant shit in it. Anthem needs plenty of tweaks to make it a better experience. And even when that happens, I don't think that will save the game. Things like, the amount of damage fire causes to your javelin, how long your javelin takes to stop overheating, overall flight times, just plenty of minor and major adjustments. I've encountered plenty of bugs during my 30 hours playing Anthem. I can actually say I've never beaten a game that's had so many bugs in it. I know of games, and I've played other games with more bugs in it than this game, but I've never beaten a game with so many bugs in it until Anthem. Some examples of those bugs are like sound dropping out, invisible enemies once you get into a mission. The game restarted my level back to 1, and none of these were game breaking, and just a simple restart was the solution, but that obviously doesn't make it any more acceptable. There's going to be a lot of patches released for this game, which will probably make this game its best form in about 10 months, which is sad. It's clear that Anthem still needed about 7 more months of development to make it a technically sound game. Now, I played Anthem with friends and also randoms, and it's a very fun experience to play in 4-player co-op. But the way I measure whether a co-op game is fun or not is to actually play it solo. And I can actually say I enjoy playing this game solo also. And the reason I measure it that way is because a game can use the social experience as a crutch to make the game fun, but that doesn't mean the actual game is fun. That means playing with friends are fun. So you remove that aspect, and if the game is still fun, that means the game fundamentally, the actual gameplay is enjoyable. But if it's only enjoyable if you're playing with others, that means that game is not good. So to me, Anthem on its own is good, but it is better played with others, absolutely. And lastly, on the gameplay aspect, one of the biggest problems with Anthem is the loading. And it's not that the loading is necessarily long, it's the fact that there's loading at all. It just completely breaks the immersion and completely breaks up the flow of the game when you're just out there doing missions and your team is, just in a rhythm, and then you have to go to a loading screen to get to the next part of the map. That is just unacceptable. If the loading times were a little bit shorter, I'm not even sure it would make a difference. Loading in general just really interrupts the experience. Alright, so let's talk about the visuals and the performance. So Anthem is a beautiful game. I played on PC, of course. But the performance is pretty bad. And there's a lot of the aforementioned bugs. I, have a GTX 1080, and I wasn't able to stay locked at 60 at all, even on medium settings at 1440p. And I've played more demanding games than Anthem at the same setting and gotten above 60. There's clearly an optimization issue. I've even compared my performance of the final game after the patches and after the drivers were released with the performance during the beta, and there was virtually no difference. The game was still playable, but nobody enjoys, inconsistent frame rates and inconsistent frame pacing. If it wasn't for the lack of optimization, this would, be a really good PC version because it has all the expected advanced graphic settings you want. You know, the world has plenty of detail and vegetation, the terrain quality is high, weather and particle effects on explosions add to the, you know, the presentation and the atmosphere of combat and battle. Lighting and shadows are nicely implemented, rendering far distances though, and you know, rendering all the activity happening on the screen in 4-player co-op definitely contributes to the frame rate buckling. The colors in the game are like really deep and vibrant. You know, the details and physics on the javelins are impressive. You know, the animations are fluid, and the transition from hovering, flying, to doing anything just feels so seamless. And it's the closest thing to an Iron Man simulator that we've gotten. Any future game that uses jetpacks or flight, I think they need to use Anthem as the standard, because it definitely gets that right. It's done it the best. I honestly don't feel like this game is getting the credit it deserves for the visuals and, you know, just how good it looks and the clean presentation. And, you know, that could be because of all the bad publicity it's getting from being pretty much EA's version of Fallout 76. And I don't mean that gameplay wise. I mean that obviously from a technical standpoint, it's very buggy and very unstable, unfortunately. But I personally think the game looks really gorgeous. And, you know, it's just, to me, just it's so pleasing to, you know, just look at the world. And it also upsets me because this, if I'm playing at 1440p medium, just imagine how this game would look if I was actually able to play it at ultra. So that kind of pisses me off at the same time. I think they did a really good job with the HUD and making, you know, the on-screen presentation very minimal. I think you can even make it more minimal than it already is in the settings, because with games like this, it's very easy for them to kind of go crazy with putting too much information on the screen. And shaky cam is on by default, but you can even turn that off, you know, if you don't want your game looking like a Michael Bay movie, you know, with the screen moving up and down rapidly, you know, on every explosion, on every, you know, gunshot. So it's great that you can turn that off, but I actually enjoy having it on. Also, something else I think this game deserves a lot of credit for is the sound design. The sound effects feel so powerful and robust. And to me, in shooters, that's very important, because if the sound effects are not there, to me, that's a killer. Because then I feel like I'm just shooting damn near plastic objects, and I'm not really, you know, creating the impact of the bullets or whatever I'm firing. Right, so I definitely need that deep and rich sound in order for me to like feel the feedback. So I, you know, and I need that the vibration from the controller. I need you know, the sound design to be right. I need the enemies to react properly, like they're getting hit. All of those, you know, go together in giving the player just that you know, that proper feedback and that response to make them feel like they're actually, you know, creating an impact on each shot, regardless of what type of weapon you're using. And I just like how they were able to create this impression that each exosuit had some type of weight to them. Even the lighter ones, they seem to have, you know, some type of weight to them, while also feeling like responsive and agile at the same time. So I think that was a balance that they definitely got right also. So here's my verdict on Anthem. Anthem is one of the buggiest, no, Anthem is the buggiest game that I've personally ever beaten. But it accomplishes something that a lot of technically sound games don't. The game is fun. I thoroughly enjoyed this game and had a lot of fun with it. There's no way I could have beaten this game putting 30 hours into something that I was not enjoying. If I'm not enjoying something in the first 5 hours, I put it down, because my stance is life is too short to be playing bad games or games you don't enjoy. So I could have never done it if I actually didn't thoroughly enjoy this game. But at the same time, I can't recommend this game to anybody in its current state. I can tell you my opinion of this game is that it's very fun. But I can objectively look at the game and tell you, no, I can't recommend this either. So, it's just a shame that the surrounding aspects of the game are, really lacking, and the game still seems to be in almost a beta form. This game seems rushed, and it just doesn't seem complete. The gameplay and the visuals are definitely there. The game just unfortunately mainly falters in the story and the technical performance. So I give Anthem a 7 out of 10. Just based on the fact that I think the gameplay is really good. And it's an amazing looking game, even though yes, it was downgraded from its initial reveal. This game is fun and the gameplay is just really good to me. So that's why it does get a 7 out of 10 for me. But at the same time, like I said, I don't recommend the game to anybody else because I can objectively see, how this experience could not be as enjoyable for other people. But I get what I enjoy in gaming from this game. It just touches that certain X factor for me personally. So if there's any questions about Anthem and my review and my score, please leave a comment down below. I'm open to having a discussion about this, and I appreciate all of you for watching. So that is my review for Anthem, and yeah, I'm out of here, y'all. Peace.